This is a build to an Earthquake Bleed Gladiator build I've been playing and have been enjoying quite a bit, so I thought it would be worth putting together a little guide explaining the mechanics, why it works so well, and just to encourage more melee playstyle. I enjoy the feeling of jumping into a crowd with a big heavy pop, so that's part of the fun. So first I'm going to go over some of the pros and cons of the build. For pros, satisfying. It's got crunchy explosions. You're hitting hard. It's very earthy, very explosion-y, very slammy, very nice. It's highly off meta. It utilizes a unique weapon, the Marohi Erqi, and the new unique boots that were introduced in 3.24 Tempest Rising. It's a heavy hitter build. It's actually extremely rare in Path of Exile. This build feels heavy and bulky, and a playstyle that's all about getting your one hit in and sustaining it for the duration until you can get another big hit in with the Vaal Earthquake. And then currently I am on a medium budget, so this build is able to run on a medium budget. The two things you really only need are the two uniques, the Marohi Erqi and the Tempest Rising, and a Vaal Earthquake. That's also an addition. You need the skill gem. But really, you could run this on a variety of builds. And while my build's in a specific direction, I would encourage people to change it up, push it onto different builds, depending on your preference of gearing. Some of the cons. The heavy hitter part is also a con. While the damage is high, especially for a bleed build, the current form does not invest in faster bleeds. So your big hit's doing about 30 million, but it's taking 6 seconds, so it's more like a 8 million DPS kind of build. It's still high, especially because of the people constantly moving, but be aware that it's not going to be instant giving bosses. It's not also super tanky. My current build can sustain itself, but it is not extremely high compared to various other high defense builds. You're not going to be blown up while playing it, as you'll see by my gameplay video, but getting a bit too distracted will end up with you getting killed. I would also encourage not playing heavy, like rippy mechanics like Ultimatum or Delirium, because those you're going to increase that likelihood. And if you want a real estimate on like how many times I've died, I'm currently sitting at 63 deaths at level 91. I personally think that's a little low, especially for the kind of builds I play, so I'm kind of happy with that. It's also fairly gear intensive. A lot of the stuff I wear right now is kind of like reaching the bare minimum of what's allowing the build to run, as seen by my shame, the one 30int node I have still, because I can't afford to get about 8 more intelligence to fix that a part of my build. So this is not a completely optimized build, but the fact that it's doing so well is actually really nice. So as I said, this is a mid-range build. My build focuses on maintaining a defense that I'm personally comfortable with, while also pushing the bleed damage that comes with the Earthquake. This build is an amalgamation of various choices made by the small community of Gladiator players on PoE Ninja. This build really is a community effort, not because they actually did, not because any of the players actually came together, but because I went around on the PoE Ninja and took pieces of what people were working on. So please look at the people on the screen. Please look at their names and appreciate that they have helped create and facilitate this build into my eyes. And a special thanks to Macro Crimson Pig 2, aka Nescom. He answered my DMs that I sent him through Path of Exile on some of his decisions, and if it wasn't for his build specifically, I wouldn't have started off my version of the build, so thank you to him. So, the mechanics. This is a Bleed Earthquake build, introduced in patch 3.24 was the Tempest Rising Boots, which allow bleeding enemies to always move if they are also affected by an elemental ailment. While other builds have been using rings like Venipuncture in order to apply their elements, me and a bunch of other mace enjoyers were aware that the Mace Mastery all damage with Mace's Chill exists. So that would mean that we would not have to create a complicated way of inflicting ailments as long as we're using a mace. And from what is available on the Trey site, a high-rolled Marohi Erqi will still beat out a bleed-crafted mace. Now, be aware this is just an observation, and I didn't do too much research into all the variabilities and all the potential crafting mechanisms. If you're well-versed in crafting, you could probably build it better, but at the same time, mace bleed crafts weren't exactly very popular, so kind of an observation bias. But I like the Marohi Erqi. I keep pronouncing it that way. I like how this hammer looks, how this hammer feels. I'm biased. This is also nice because we're getting the Earthquake high damage with high damage over time. Earthquake's very good for bleed builds and synergizes well with maces. And the high damage plus high dot investment means we're hitting about 15 million dot damage with just the skill gem fully 6 length. And like with barely any investment in the tree. It's a very nice baseline for very basic damage as long as you have the T0 unique. But really this T0 unique isn't very popular, so I'm fine with it. This is also nice because we're getting the movement bleed damage bonus, meaning we don't have to worry about weapon swapping as long as we're hitting every 2 to 3 seconds to refresh chill. And we're using Vaal Earthquake in order to not have to constantly hit with the slow Marohi Erqi. We're not investing into a lot of attack speed, so our normal Earthquake takes a full second to come out, so I wouldn't suggest using it a lot. For damage, we're solving a bunch of the issues with the Marohi Erqi with Resolute Technique to solve the accuracy problems, and because crit doesn't really scale bleed damage unless you're doing a select few scenarios, it's completely fine. And while our Earthquake is our main skill, it can be off cooldown. And while you can solve that with a Soul Flask, it's also good to use Shockwave attached to a Leap Slam for trash packs, and also to refill chill on bosses, so you don't have to swing the whole thing really quickly. I personally use a Cyclone as well attached to the Shockwave for like a personal preference. It also makes it easier in case I miss with the Leap Slam. But something interesting to note is we don't actually need to invest a lot of damage into the Shockwave support. Just the Shockwave and the Leap Slam itself work well, so we actually use the Body Armor 6 link as a 5 link right now with a Battle Mage's Cry tech, where we connect Battle Mage's Cry to Vulnerability and Life Tap, and connect that to Call to Arms so that we don't have to hit it every time. It's automated. And then we connect that to Hex Bloom, and we have so that every time we Leap Slam in particular, because that exerts attacks, we are casting Vulnerability. And because of the Hex Bloom, it bursts out, and it makes it much easier for mapping. We don't have to constantly cast it. And it's a much cheaper alternative to Vulnerability rings. You could ideally also grab a Vulnerability ring, but that's neither here or there. It's also completely possible to build this build in a variety of ways. You could go more with the full damage route, just completely ignoring any kind of defenses, grabbing the Ugor's Hunger, and just grabbing a bunch of damage over time nodes. You could go that way, or you could go the opposite way and roll more defensively with not investing as much into damage, but making yourself a big tank. My current version sits somewhere in the middle, where really I've invested half and half, where I have an issue with sustain for the defenses, but my max hit's pretty alright. And then my damage is pretty up there. I think I'm running about 20 million bleed damage. So it's pretty half and half. But for the terms of an all-rounder build, for the kind of content I run Blight, I run Harby, I run Breach, Expedition, Vaal Temples, all that kind of stuff. For those kinds of mechanics with a high density of mobs, this build has been going so well, and I've been barely dying. All right, let me do a quick little overview of the passive tree. So, first things first, grab the basic nodes. We grab the bleed here, as well as the increased bleed duration. We grab Unwavering Stance in this current version of the build. Grab these nodes for the leech and extra damage, as well as the increased armor. We go over here, grab the life nodes. We grab some of the max res here, corrupted blood here. You can choose whatever you want from this side or not choose it at all, depending on your gear investment. My shame. You grab these for the max resistances. We come down here, grab the mana reservation, grab this tree here, as well as the 60% increased damage here. We invest a little into attack speed because this side doesn't give us as much. Here's my current jewel. This one's more focused on damage. Ideally, you would want an Overlord, but those are extremely expensive. So either you can get Overlord on the tree or try your hand at corrupting the Marohi Erqi in order to get a Fortify support. Either way, Fortify should be a later investment. We have Drive of Destruction, Heavy Hitter, Field of Fight, classic stuff for damage. We have a Brood for Potency here and a Rend. These are very nice. Over here, the one we really want is Mob Mentality. Rattling Bellows is nice, but it doesn't affect the bleed damage as much. This one just allows us to sustain charges more often. Classic life nodes. We grab this for some extra endurance charge duration. Reduce critical strike damage. Helps a lot with survivability. What you're going to see here is we have some tattoos. This is to help cap the bleed chance, so we don't need to waste a support in order to increase bleed. We have about 5 bleed tattoos, I'm pretty sure. Yep. And that gives us 100% chance to bleed. Okay. Grab this. Damage is faster. Eventually, I'm going to want the damage per endurance charge. That one's going to be really nice. We grab these nodes. These are very nice. The most important node of all damage with Mason Scepters inflict chill. That's very good. Very, very good. We come over here. Take this side for the physical damage. And if you're not doing the 4th Vow tech, you would want to go around this way so that you can grab this one instead, because this one gives a lot more and a little life. A lot more life on that direction. And then over here, we grab this one for the reduced extra damage from critical strikes, as well as 10% physical damage from hits taken as chaos damage. That helps with the defense. And then over here, we put the Glorious Vanity. Ideally, you want stuff that looks good on these 3 nodes and possibly these 2 if you plan on going over here. That's also a fantastic direction. I would recommend coming over here if you're able. And yeah, Divine Flesh. That about covers the passive tree. All right. Time to discuss gear and the Ascendancy choice. In terms of gear, I'm putting this at a medium budget, mostly because my budget looks like this, and it really hasn't gone past 10 at one point. So I'm saying it's about 10, but I really don't know the cost of all these things. So first things first, very high rolled mace. Here we go. Ideally, you'd want some kind of Fortify corruption on this as well. That's probably the easiest one, less expensive than getting an Overlord on the Cluster Jewel. Here's the Earthquake, Melee Fizz. I want to get an Awakened version of this soon. Volatility, very good. Makes the damage rolls extremely high. Deadly Ailment, very good. It's like the less hit damage is like minuscule to the amount of bleed this gives us. Cruelty, also extremely good for this build. And then Awaken Brutality. More Fizz is fantastic. Currently leveling that up. We'll start with my gloves. Currently trying to get better implicits on this with the Eldritch implicits, but ideally want something like a Rage Gain to just increase speed while mapping. The Extinguish is currently not that bad, and then the Exerted Attacks kind of meaningless, but you can work with what you want there. And then over here we have Pride, Determination, Defiance Banner, and Enlighten. Gonna try and get a 4. Pray for me. And then I also have an aspect of the Spider skill. Currently can't run that, but once I do have an Enlighten, I will be able to run it, and that gives a lot of flat damage, especially for longer encounters, such as bossing. And that'll just ramp up the bleed DPS, so that's currently the plan. Not going to get too much into why it's a level 20, but I had a glitch where I couldn't get level 30 on my Beastcraft itinerary, and I just gave up and didn't get a level 30. You should get the level 30 if you can. It's not that hard to get the Black Morgan Beast. Basic rings, anointed a little bit. I need to get better ones, better life rolls, but obviously getting a lot of resistances from this. Life, armor. The physical attack leeches mana is nice, although that can pretty much be subsided by Cluster Jewel. A okay Rastless Coil. I reached the 40% more. Obviously, this could be much better eventually, but this was on the cheap. Tempest Goliaths. These are also not perfect rolls. You're seeing the trend, but absolutely necessary. And I got the max roll on Damaging Ailment Steal Faster. This locket, like I said, you'd ideally probably want Defiance of Destiny if you're going full defensive, but for the damage, you get the damage over time multiplier, you get all the attributes you need, get some life on that, some resistances. It's pretty good. And then I also got Charisma on there. You could also anoint a more damaging anointment, something to do with damage over time multiplier. That's an option. Helmet. I'm actually kind of happy with this helmet. I might actually metacraft it a bit to try and get a life roll on this. But, you got the physical damage taken as fire, helps with the survivability, a couple resistances, armor, physical damage taken recouped as life, helps a little bit with the sustainability, and then the physical damage from hits taken as lightning while unique enemies in a presence just helps for those higher damaging moments. Flasks, not that crazy. Got a Soul Ripper here. Ideally, you want this as close to 30 charges as possible, just so that, it refills quickly, and it just instantly gives you your exact amount for an Earthquake. And so you don't have to work as hard for full charges. Lion's Roar. Knockback's a little helpful. Mostly here for the more damage and then plus armor. Quicksilver Flask just makes things easier, especially while running with the Vaal Earthquake. Armor Flask, and then a Life Flask for immunity. I actually haven't been using this at all, so I legit just forgot to remove that. Oh my god, wow, I have not replaced that in a minute. Okay, so, and then finally, I want to talk about the Ascendancy. So, we're doing Gladiator because it's the bleed build. Now, these two nodes, while not like best in slot, they're useful. They're nice. They're more of a quality of life direction than either of these because the challenger charges just make it so that while you're doing pinnacles or unique enemies, you can just get your earthquake out fairly quickly. It feels like a relatively normal attack, and it just makes things way easier. Also adds the damage and stuff, so that's nice. Then over here you got the more physical and reduced physical while max charges. That's also good. These two are really the main ones. Blood in the Eyes helps so much with capping bleed chance, because without that we would need either the jewel for a chance to bleed or way more tattoos, so we'd sacrifice a lot more strength for that. And that's pretty nice. Also the MAME edition's pretty good, especially for the amount we hit. We got the Vengeance, and then, you know, the Battle Mage's Crest support, and Leap Slam, and Cyclone, and all that. It's pretty nice. And then Gratuitous Violence, that's the main one. If you're richer and can afford to get the Flame and Flesh for this, you can just grab that and go Slayer or Champion. That is completely up to you. This is the main one we want. Adds a bunch more damage and makes things so much more satisfying, and makes up for a lot of the clear issues, because we don't really scale into any AoE, and the explosions just help clear up packs very nicely. You also don't have to be a duelist at all. You could go a Marauder. I'm sure you could probably do something with a Pathfinder over here. Really, because this is kind of a medium budget setup, the Gladiator really fills in a lot of the issues that can be solved with higher amounts of currency, higher investment. And like for something that's closer to a league starter, obviously not a league starter, but for something like as a second or maybe third build, when you have a decent amount of currency but not like a giga amount, I'd say this build's just right for you. And it's just good to play a heavy build. That's why I'm such a big fan of it, and that's why I got this video as quickly as it did. Because not often can I play a bleed build that feels like a big impact and doesn't make me suffer for it. So, thank you for watching. Thank you for watching.